The PlayStation brand has been around for over 2 decades now and is one of the most successful home consoles ever. And with the recent release of the PlayStation 5, let's take a look at the console's interesting history. This all started back in 1986. At the time, Sony was mostly known for their Walkman players and televisions, and the NES was a year old. But Nintendo was already working on their next console and made a deal with Sony to use the Sony SCP-700 audio processor for the SNES. Thanks to Sony, the SNES sounded a lot better than the Genesis. Nintendo would reach out to Sony in 1988 when they began seeing that Sony was working on CD-ROMs. They asked Sony to create one for the SNES as an add-on, but already there were contract disputes between Nintendo and Sony. On top of that, Nintendo would pull the rug under Sony and start working with Philips on this device. And Philips at that time was a huge rival to Sony, which added insult to injury. This all happened a day after Sony would show off their add-on at CES 1991. This was clearly extremely embarrassing for Sony, and their response to this was to declare war and make their own console. The PlayStation project was having trouble being greenlit though within the company. A meeting was held in June of 1992, and Sony executives that were a little older and didn't really understand video games at the time were having trouble grasping this concept of the console that was presented to them by Ken Kutaragi. He then tried to move over to Sony Music for help, and CEO Shigeru Maruyama agreed to form a new division of Sony called Sony Computer Entertainment. The PlayStation would be ready to be released in Japan on December 3rd of 1994, and it would have a successful launch and was praised as one of Sony's most important product launches since the Walkman. Thanks to Sony's cheap CD-ROM manufacturing process compared to Nintendo and Sega, the PlayStation 1 was a hit with developers, and had a lower price point than the Saturn, which made it also a hit with customers. At 1995's E3, Sony would hold a presentation for the PlayStation where the famous lines for the price tag $299 were said to the crowd. It would release later that year on September 9th. And it was once again sold out across all stores. By the time 1995 ended, Sony sold over 800,000 consoles in the US alone. This was all thanks to Sony being very pro third-party developer, while Sega and Nintendo focused more on their own games, leaving third-party to be a secondary. In total, Sony had sold over 102 million PlayStations, making it the third best-selling console to date, and Sony knew exactly what to do next. Rumors began spreading in 1997 about the features of the PS2, including a DVD player, backwards compatibility, and even internet connection capabilities. 2 years later, on March 1st of 1999, Sony would officially confirm the PS2's existence, and would have an official presentation on September 20th at the Tokyo Game Show, as well as playable demos. The PS2 launched on March 4th of 2000 in Japan, October 26th for the United States, and November 4th for Europe. Just like its predecessor, the console sold out fast, and made over $150 million on day one. Those out of luck were turning to eBay and were paying thousands of dollars. The PS2's launch was so successful that it would discontinue Sega's slightly successful console a few months later. And this was a pretty unique launch because it had a pretty weak lineup of games at first, as well as having delays with its memory cards. But despite all of that, the PS2 itself proved to be a hit. Of course, its biggest selling point was that it had a DVD player, and DVD players at the time were extremely expensive, but having one that costed $300 and could play video games was revolutionary. On top of that, of course, it was extremely powerful, and many, including Microsoft, feared this for the future of computers. Over time though, the PS2's lineup would begin to grow, as it was getting some temporary exclusives including Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty and GTA 3. By May of 2002, Sony dropped their price down to $199, right next to the GameCube's price. In total, the PS2 sold over 155 million consoles, making it the best-selling console ever. But now that the stakes have been risen so high, the question for Sony will be, can they do it again? Work on the PS3 can be found all the way back as early as 2001 when Sony teamed up with Toshiba and IBM to create a powerful cell processor, which basically means that there are 7 microchips within this one chip, and the PS3 is actually 35 times more powerful than the PS2. A prototype of the PS3 was presented at E3 2005, which had the weird boomerang DualShock, as well as 2 HDMI ports, 6 USB ports, and 3 Ethernet ports. Not sure why someone would need that many. Unfortunately though, those processors caused a delay for the console, which once again pushed it to be presented at E3 2006. This time removing the Wi-Fi from the cheaper 20GB version, worth $500, and instead had the Wi-Fi on the higher $600 60GB version. Compare this to the 360's more expensive version costing $400, and I think we can see a problem here. The console launched in November of 2006. Within 24 hours, 81,000 were sold in Japan, while some countries still had delays and were waiting, all the way until 2007 for parts of Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. In the first 48 hours, the console sold over 600,000 units. In a world of the 360 and Wii, the PS3 at first had a rough start. Due to its really high price tag, Sony lost over $2 billion. The reason it was so expensive was because the PS3 was really expensive to make in the first place, and they were forced to reduce the price, which meant that they were losing money on each console and depending on the software sales. Eventually though, production costs would drop by 2009, and the PS3 was able also to regain control of the market, which was thanks to Sony pushing out some really good marketing ads into 2010 and beyond.
Your PlayStation. I got a tip that you were making the PS3 $299. Confirm or deny?
$299? Bernie, you can't believe everything you read on the internet. That's how World War I got started.
To date, the console has sold over 87 million units. Now with their reputation being fixed and having some pretty tough competition, what will Sony do next? Word on the PS4 can be dated all the way back to 2012, when Sony started to ship out their prototypes. And in New York City on February 20th of 2013, Sony would officially announce the PS4. They further announced details and the design at E3 2013. Sony claimed that the PS4's GPU was 10 times as powerful as the PS3's, and would launch at $399. This also seemed to be the perfect generation for Sony to regain more control, as Nintendo's console didn't really have many third-party games, and Microsoft's console had a disaster of an E3 event, talking about the console remaining online for at least every 24 hours, costing $499, and being bundled with an accessory that many people didn't even need, as well as being focused more on entertainment than actual video games, and of course having to jump through hoops just to share games. This one actually caused Sony to make an ad replying to them.
This is how you share your games on PS4. Thanks.
PlayStation.
That was pretty legendary. The console of course was hot upon release, selling 1 million units within 24 hours on November 17th of 2013. The console would continue to have huge successful sales numbers compared to its competition. 2 years after its release, it would surpass 30 million units, and in 2016 would get a slimmer console as well as a Pro version with 4K capabilities. This is also when Sony would take a dive into a new industry with the PSVR. This would make the PS4 the first console to have VR capabilities. As of making this video, the console was sold well over 110 million units, making it the second best-selling console of all time. So what does Sony have up their sleeve for their fifth console? In May of 2019, we saw the first of the PS5 in action, when footage leaked of the PS5 loading Spider-Man in just 0.8 seconds instead of the PS4's 15. Later on in the year, we saw a photo of its dev kit as well as confirmation of its existence. In April of 2020, the PS5's controller, the DualSense, would be revealed, which had a totally different design, and moved the light bar from the DualShock 4 to be a lot more subtle within the controller. It also replaced the rumble with haptic feedback, which feels a lot smoother. It also had a built-in microphone and speakers, so you didn't need that thing. And on June 11th of 2020, the PS5's design was officially unveiled. The PS5 is said to be very backwards compatible friendly with most PS4 and PSVR games. Pre-orders for the console are already insane, as the PS5 made the same amount of pre-orders in 12 hours as the PS4 did in 12 weeks. Gamers have been enjoying the PlayStation now for over 2 decades. It's a story that started with betrayal but ended up on the top. It is said that Sony has already filed trademarks for PlayStation 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which tells us, in addition to the already huge fanbase, that the PlayStation is not going anywhere. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.